Good evening, I'm Dean Anson. Welcome to the City of Laconia Conservation Commission meeting of Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. It is 6:10 and we have a quorum, and we're going to start off by pledging allegiance to the flag. No, that's not I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to go back to the agenda now. I'm Dean Anson.
Deb Williams.
Lisa Moran.
Mike Foot.
Okay, as I said before, we have a quorum, and Taylor, want to introduce yourself, please?
Taylor Daigle.
Thank you. Okay. So, the minutes of the previous meeting, anybody have any comments? Anybody had a chance to review them?
I move we accept the minutes of November 17th, 2021 as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay. Old business, natural resource inventory from 2021. And what our goal tonight is to review the document, make some comments, come up with a philosophy on how we want to have this assembled so that it will fit in the city master plan. So, were you able to contact anybody from the planning board who's participating in putting together the master plan?
So I emailed Peter and Stacy. Stacy couldn't come tonight. She'll be back for the next meeting though. And I haven't heard from Peter yet, but Stacy gave me a couple comments just regarding like, focusing on the lakes, maybe focusing on recycling, things like that. Nothing really about the size of the chapters and whatnot, so I'm thinking that might just be something we want to just hash out in person.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So Stacy is saying that the planning board was hoping that we would be more structured and flesh out recycling and lakes, or not be as
I think, so I phrased it as what would you like to see as a focus in the NRI,
Okay.
and like how, or in the chapter for the master plan.
Okay.
And so she was throwing around a few ideas that
Okay.
just stood out to her as something we should
Thank you.
emphasize when we're like narrowing this down to just the chapter.
Okay, I just didn't want to go in the wrong direction. Okay, thanks.
Okay, has everybody gotten a chance to go through it, through the draft that Taylor has put together from September?
Most of it. An honest answer, no.
I was reading it today and I was impressed by the way it's put together. Right, I think it references a lot of what we've seen before. And it's not going to change, right? We're Laconia, we only got so much size, we only got so much rivers and stuff, but I was impressed by the ability to read through it.
Yes, I thought it was well done. There was one spot that caught me though.
Well, Deb is looking for that. I just have a quick question, just as I glance through this land cover assessment from 2019. Have we had any changes in the percentage of density based on any development we've had, or?
I only looked at that study from environmental perspective, but I can go back and find the numbers for as far as like how much development has changed.
I'm just wondering based on pressures we might have experienced, but might not be that bad, so. Thank you.
Okay, I read through the entire document, and I think there is a lot of really good information. I think I don't think that that the document would be put in the master plan the way it is now, because it's too voluminous. It's complete, but it's too voluminous. I don't know that for sure, but I thought that maybe what we could do is take certain sections that are detailed, and put them in appendices, so that we reference into text, so that, for instance, I don't want to use, well, maybe what we do is, okay, so
And maybe I heard this before, the presentation that they give in the master plan is annotated and can go to, instead of losing any of this good information, really it's just annotated and you can link to it. And I think I've heard that in some of the master plan stuff before.
Yeah, when Dean approached me about the NRI and talking about like updating everything, I took the conversation as this is its own document, but the information, we will pull everything together from this, but this does not have to be the chapter for the master plan. This is more like the background document for that, and then the highlights are the chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So if we would like to shorten this, we absolutely can. If we want to lengthen it, we totally could, It's the chapter I will have to craft out of this.
I think the most important thing is for us to cull from this what we want people to, what are the most important things that we want people to remember? And then things like the historic and cultural resources are important. However, we could have a chapter that says historic and cultural resources, and pick out a couple of sentences that kind of give the flavor of what is in this chapter, and then put the chapter at the back.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the document is really well written. I think that we're just going to, one or two things I think will happen. One is people won't read it, and the second is that when they come to the master plan, putting this chapter into the master plan, they may pick out what they think is important, and I would rather that we pick out, because we have a different point of view.
For example, Dean, looking at riparian zones and floodplains on page 29, we might pick out something like floodplains support rich and diverse ecosystems. Despite being affected by periodic flooding, riparian zones work to protect water quality by allowing infiltration, reducing flooding. Natural vegetations along these zones protect water temperature and provide shade. For wildlife, vegetation is important for erosion and bank stabilization. I mean, take just that out of that entire paragraph and put that in. Like, that's what we want them to know, that you need to protect this riparian area. Or is that even too much?
No, I don't think it's too much.
Okay. So I'm assuming, and I think we talked about this before, so I so much apologize, but all our references to ordinances and all that is now up to date?
Yeah, all the references to that are up to date, and what I tried to do was some of the sections have like a green box.
Yes, I see
I tried
that.
to call out the changes that have been made to ordinances related to resources.
Yep.
Just so that's an easy
Okay.
visual.
So is the goal, Mr. Chair, tonight to identify the sentences or sections we want left in, and then so that Taylor can identify what will be in the background as a link to the rest of it, or what is your goal tonight for us?
Well, I don't know, what do you think, Deb?
I think, you know, even if we just like looked at the table of contents, picked out what we feel are the important things to go into the master plan. I mean, the whole document itself is, you know, is fine. You know, if we rearranged maybe some of the historical things to the end of it or whatever. But if we just went through, you know, the sections, or if we, you know, all agreed on, should I just lost it, on what's important for the majority of the people who are looking at the master plan to see. You know, I mean, for me, I think certainly, you know, water quality is right up there as something that definitely needs to be focused on.
So I'm looking at, I have to go back and look, so I don't know what in soils 17, what in soils, but like I would like to see a reference to, a reference to where you could, I can't keep this thing on. A reference to where you find the soils information, but I'm sure people would be bored to tears to figure out forested soils that talks all about them, but, and the soils groups, and I think, yeah.
So I'll just ask you, when you think of the soils, I mean, for me, when I think of soils available, I think of agriculture.
Well, yes, but I think we're.
I understand, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you, go ahead.
No, I understand we should have all of the information in there, but maybe not in the master plan.
Well, so maybe what we could have as a sentence is that the soils are broken down into agriculture, forest land, and more information on restrictions or whatever can be found, you know, this link. And for information to find out about your soils, and that would, I don't know what you want to use. I mean, the Web Soil Survey, which is a USDA product, it has a tutorial, but it kind of needs to be walked through. They no longer produce books that people can just look at. So but I would just let them know that there is a way to find out what their soils are, and that's a good starting place.
Yeah, okay.
But I don't know that, you know, they need to know as much has been written
No,
here.
certainly, yeah. That makes sense.
But just to know that, hey, you don't just go out and dig a hole. There's also, I don't know if you want to mention, if this is the right place, but mention, you know, that any development will require certain tests that your engineer will inform you about, like perk tests and all that, just so they realize that they may need some assistance.
So, Mike, what's your thinking? What do you think the most important points are?
I love that it's a document, right? And then nowadays, you're not delivering something that's printed on paper. And so the voluminous of it is less to me than the access to it. How it guides developers, I'm a bit unsure. I mean, they look at some of this stuff and they acknowledge, but it kind of needs to be into the firmament of how the town develops.
Oh, well, that Mike brings up a good question. I guess I'm thinking, who is accessing this information at this level?
Oh, that would be something that they could see. right? You'd be able to track that through the website, or,
I can talk to IT about that, I'm not
I just
sure.
don't know. We don't
Yeah.
know, I agree with that. Who actually reads deeper?
What if,
Brady Sullivan?
I was, you know,
Well, but wouldn't they go to the ordinances?
No, they don't go anywhere.
No, I don't know. I don't know, not being a developer, I don't know.
I think a developer would be focused on ordinances, but if they want background on an area and like, oh, you know, we could do this project in 3 different cities, which one does this align with the best?
Well-
That might be more master plan.
Yeah, but they
Right.
could click the link to find that
Yeah.
stuff out too.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, and here, I'm following
I gotcha.
down the rabbit hole.
Yep.
Some of this here, what I see is what inclines people to pick Laconia,
True.
right? Is it 'cause their grandmother from Lowell had extra money and had a summer home up here and spit the bit? And now they got some extra jing, so
Yeah.
whatever that, I mean, that's a fairly, constructive what happens here.
Yep.
But I see that changing also. I see it changing in that, well, a good number of my road I don't know anymore,
Yeah.
right? And I've seen this change, so, and I've had some other friends say, oh, it's they're gonna chase all the locals out of here. I'm like, if you can't survive on $7 an hour, $15 an hour, $22 an hour, yeah, they're gonna bite you, and it's gonna be harder. How does it form to this? Once again, I just don't wanna bury this stuff. I like the link, and I think that there's a lot of good information in there for people who don't know, right? And I find out that I run into people who aren't from here constantly, you know, or never would even think about.
So are you saying in the structure, you want to see maybe a little bit more text just to invite them to then click on a link to
I
go
don't
somewhere
know,
else?
I'm
Okay.
hard to define, I don't have anything in
Okay.
there. In that spot, you got me flat-footed, no pun intended. But,
Well, and it might be, I mean, it might be that maybe 2 or 3 sentences of teaser would say more, click this link, and then we have kind of the dry informational stuff that I was jumping to. It's like,
see, this stuff is juicy to me. but-
it is, it's wonderful. I just meant, if we were trying to pare this document down,
But once again, you're not printing it.
well, that's, well, right.
but to fit it into the master plan.
I
What's
anticipate,
it's not in a box,
I'm sorry.
it's on a computer.
I was just gonna say that I anticipate each section, so we'll have our chapter heading, and we'll have a number of subsections based on what we decide. I anticipate maybe 2 paragraphs for each section is what they are aiming for. So like, maybe 2 paragraphs on soil, and obviously like linking to these documents and where people can look up their soils and things like that. Maybe more for water resources, I think that makes more sense.
So were you thinking of culling a lot of the text completely?
That was the impression that I got
Oh,
when I was, not to remove it all, this document can stay exactly as it is and we can post it tomorrow if we want. But the chapter for the master plan that has to be approved of by council and everything, that's gonna be very short.
well, yeah, that's what I guess maybe I need to go back. What I heard at the last meeting, just from my memory, was that, yes, this document is great, we don't wanna lose any of it, but we want to truncate it in some way so that it's easy to find the things you need, and if you have an interest, you can go back and look at the things that may be extraneous to some useful piece of information you need today. You don't need to know that there were like 400 railroad tracks leading to New Hampshire, but you might need to know something about updated transportation.
What if we structured this in a way that's consistent with an applicant comes in,
Okay.
what kind of information do we need from them? We need to know about their, do you have any wetlands? What are
Yep.
your soils like?
What,
Do you have shoreland? Do you, so that what we do is we structure this so that somebody comes in and they understand what the Conservation Commission is looking for, and we pick out the parts of this document that are relevant to, for instance, the wetlands.
Steep
What's-
slopes,
Huh?
yeah,
steep slopes, wetlands,
Right, and so.
riparian setbacks.
Right, so somebody comes in and they say, there may be wetlands on my property. Okay, so you need a wetland scientist to delineate it. These are the kinds of wetlands, these are the conditions that describe a wetland. And here are the wetland regulations for the city. And then reference this document and say, for more information on vernal pools, important wetlands, what's the waterfront like? So that somebody comes in and they read this and they go, oh, we understand exactly why you want this information. Because wetlands are really important. We get our drinking water from the lake. One way or another, we get it from the lake. I have a private well, but it's tied into the lake. So that when it comes to so we have wildlife action plans. So why is that important? Well, because if you are abutting a state forest,
Which you can do around here fairly easily.
right,
yeah.
you may be breaking up a corridor, and we don't want you to do that. Because when they move from Opeechee to Winnisquam, they're gonna have some way to get there safely.
Or even be aware there's a corridor, so there's no human-wildlife conflicts, if they're not aware of it, then.
Right, so the descriptions of the types of forest, I think that's really important. But a developer may look at it and say,
So deep,
so it's, I think that if we leave this essentially with minor comments, leave it the way it is, and we can reference back to, different sections, but what we do for the master plan is a shorter document that maybe is 10 pages. And has the meat and potatoes that you need to understand about us, because when you come to the Conservation Commission, these are the things that are important to us.
so would she also have to go to the planning board and have
Oh, yeah,
them
but-
pick
but-
out, I'm just saying.
Yeah, so that the planning board is putting this master plan together, and so they can look at it and say, hey, and they've done this before, hey, you didn't include anything about riparian zones, why didn't you include
But
that?
they gotta hear it, because the reason they get input is because of groups like this.
Mhm.
And
That's
they
right.
don't know it. When I talk to, city council, they're like, when I first signed up for this gig, I had no idea. And so it's all a learning process, so I think this is where they gain the information, is from a committee like this.
Right.
Cause it's not their stuff, they're just
Right.
need guidance.
But for us to have a section on land that are in conservation easements, I think that that's important. Because some developer, like the guy who came in with, Nick the other day, said, I got 13 acres and I need to develop 1 acre, the other 12 or 11 are not buildable. Would you put those into a conservation easement?
I thought that was a great idea. Personally, I thought that was a very deft placement of that, thought. I thought it was good.
I'll reach out to Nick about that, actually. I forgot I haven't heard back from him about if he
Right.
got an answer from his client about it.
So with giving a tax break, cause it's not buildable, So not charging them for all of that, and they're not gonna go in and muck around in there. I think it's an equitable type of,
Now,
concession, and,
Just-
but,
now the city council might look at that and say, hey, we don't wanna take land out of, reduce taxes on land because we need the revenue. But we're saying, okay, we understand that, but there are places where, rather than have them come back in a few years and say, hey, we'd like to, wanna build this on stilts. And we want
I wanna put a road around the backside of this vernal pool, because I'm not going to impact it, because my name is and I don't care.
Right,
Yeah, I get it,
One,
been there.
one thing Stacy, Susie, had talked about was recycling emphasis, and I'm not sure there's anything in here, as a natural resources inventory about
Right,
recycling.
yeah.
We could, if she was interested in that, that might be a place where the soils could actually be expanded to include some sort of composting, biosolids or something in the master plan. Could be one place that recycling, I'm not sure how we would incorporate recycling at the transfer station into the natural resources inventory.
So we have, I'm sorry,
No, you go ahead.
at the end, it has the resource and conservation recommendations, which we should include, and we could have, that could be a snippet at the end.
Recycling, use of, geez, I'm gross. Well, and also,
Along with the land
The-
use here.
I
the
would
soil.
really, I'm inept. I give up. So, that's okay, just, I would encourage, before we finalize this, if she's interested in recycling, getting in touch with Paige Wilson at Lakes Region Planning Commission. Because they are moving forward with some ideas and potentially grant-funded infrastructure or connections that could inform this potentially.
Okay.
She's been doing some work with schools and institutions, but also I think they're hoping to do more.
So, I plead ignorance. I didn't read the article in the paper the other day on Guilford and how they're,
I didn't either.
I did.
Tell us.
if someone could enlighten me here,
no, it was
I'm
just-
willing to be schooled.
It was just great, and it was like a brief little history of how they had started, and then they joined Laconia to do the single stream, and how they backed out of that. Didn't talk about the glass connection, the Canada glass connection, which I was kind of surprised. I don't know if they're still doing that or not.
What's that? What is that? Is that something that sucks out the glass north?
They, yes, underground. No, it was,
Cool.
I believe they were taking, truckloads to Canada to be processed for road.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
for road bed,
Right.
Subsurface.
So, I mean,
But
I
we
think,
just don't do it in the US, that's something that we've bypassed.
well, no, Guilford, I thought had a machine so that they could do it on their
So why
road.
isn't Laconia doing that?
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in on recycling here, because I don't think it belongs in this document. I think that is an absolute separate issue that we need to take up as a commission. And I have talked to the city manager, and he said, you wanna talk about recycling? You go right ahead. You wanna develop a better recycling? You go right ahead. And I told him that I thought that when we went from separation of materials to a single stream, we made a mistake. Because we had educated the public on how to do it, and now we dumbed it down and made it really easy to throw everything in.
So is that, just since I don't recycle in Laconia, I'm not here all the time, so we do single stream and that's,
We do
Is that-
single stream without glass now. One of the
Or,
biggest.
or any fluffy plastic.
Yeah, film, and no film
Okay.
type plastic. We used to at one time have remote recycling deposit locations, and people were being really terrible about just throwing anything
Abusing
in
it.
there. And when I went to the transfer station the other day, there's still people throwing garbage bags full of recycling in the recycling bins. So,
But that's, okay, so, but
I'm
that's,
just letting you know.
that's outside of
Of
this,
and
I
Right.
believe. It's
I
a separate
concur.
issue.
I concur.
And I think that the issue of composting belongs with the recycling part. I mean, that's my personal opinion, because we're talking about delineate various natural resources, including water, land cover, et cetera, and compost is not a
No,
natural, a natural resource. It is a resource, but it's not a natural, and it is natural, but it's, I
So-
think that that's a whole different, and
That's another project we could just
it is absolutely,
sooner or later work on.
yeah.
go ahead.
Thank you. I was just gonna say, I think though that we have to in some way acknowledge that, especially like forest lands and maybe agricultural lands have been impacted by the use of composted materials, like the forest lands, biosolids and stuff. I mean, I'm just saying, we may, I
Where are
don't,
we using, where are we depositing biosolids?
I'm going back a few years, but for a long time, for a while, that was the solution, was to take biosolids out and feed the forest lands by spreading biosolids.
Really? Where?
I don't have particulars on exact where. I know I attended several public meetings, not specifically Laconia. Gilmington had put a ban on it. I mean, but for a while there, that it was allowed.
The only place that I've heard biosolids put on Laconia lands is on athletic fields.
Yeah,
And the neighbors complain because of the odor associated with the biosolids.
yeah. I
So I think all of that recycling, composting, biosolids,
Okay.
all of that stuff is important. I just don't think it belongs in this document.
I
Maybe we have
concur, I concur with that.
Right,
I
But it-
concur with that.
but if it should be part of the master plan with Parks and Rec or whatever, or not Parks, you know what I mean?
Right.
DPW.
Right,
Right.
so sliding over on that, sliding over on that,
Fine station needs to go into it.
I approach, and it's my personal truck, it's my business personal truck, is Humpty Dumpty. It's a red pickup truck, and I've gone and brought, it's just what I drive, instead of everybody else driving a Toyota or whatever.
I'll trade you.
Yeah, you wanna. But I've brought stuff that I just didn't want back in my compost. As a farm, I compost most of my stuff. I reuse it. I know where it is. Sometimes helping out the family, I don't necessarily want it. Or one day, it was a Friday and I needed it clean for Saturday morning so I could do more. And I was like, oh, I'll run up to the dump. There should be no problem. And they give me a hard time. They say, why do you bring it here? I said, the dump? I said, we just bring it to Guilford. Why do we have to use our fuel to bring the leaves to Guilford where you go and put them anyways? Because they're the ones that have the grinders. So now I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll just go to Guilford, who accepts the truck without any,
Even though you're not a Guilford resident.
right,
Wow.
right, accepts the truck because they see it. And I just do regular stuff, you know what I mean? And so it goes there. I think when we look at this composting, and I don't know how, Pedal Pushers is anymore, they had quite a setup out back and they were taking a lot of that stuff. But, a lot of that I see now going directly to Guilford. Most of the people bring it in and dump it at the center, but then it all gets picked up and goes there.
What if we had?
So I just think, rather than just Laconia trying to solve it, if we're using these two facilities together, then there should be some sort of thing. Now,
I said that. with the
Guilford, they recycle glass.
glass. Right.
Me, I just take it down to the corner of Scenic Road and break it on the corner. Because it's got no teasing. But they recycle it, and I'm like crazy. All those years of telling you what was supposed to be done,
Okay,
now
so,
we can't do it.
so I think that one of the things we could do in this section on natural resources is put in a statement that, we're in the process of developing a document around, recycling of waste material like bottles and cans and paper and cardboard, et cetera, and composting, and it will be in a separate chapter of the master plan, if that's what the master plan wants.
Yeah, so we have to be a little bit careful about assigning different chapters, because so when you write a master plan, you're allowed to have certain chapters, like you're allowed to have a natural resource chapter, transportation and whatnot. But so, for example, I was talking to Dean about adding a climate change chapter. We have to make sure that in the state statutes that we're allowed to even have a chapter on that.
Oh my God.
So I have not done that research yet because I figured we'll see where
Right.
these conversations go.
Well, could
But
it be,
I don't know if we could add a recycling chapter or something.
maybe
like
not
that.
right, and
Yeah.
like I said, I think it should be DPW that
Mhm.
just alludes to that or whatever, but, we have climate change, like, within this, and it's not a separate chapter,
Yeah, so that's.
so I think that would work.
Yeah, we can still incorporate it into our own chapter. But if we wanted to make it a separate thing, that might be a little bit more challenging.
And that's where that little thing was, I think it was page 23. Yeah. Where you say, it's right before where the deeper waters are cold year-round. This sentence before that, as of late, however, scientists in the region have acknowledged that ice-out dates are occurring earlier and earlier in the year, a clear sign of the effects climate change and warmer winters will have on the area, but how about is having on the area?
Yeah.
Or have,
Sorry.
yeah, and so it's ice in is later, and ice out is earlier, so, so part of that information is anecdotal. One of my neighbors is responsible for ice in, ice out dates for Winnisquam. And I talked to him the other night, he told me how he does it. Somebody's doing, the Mount Washington is it the Mount Washington that does the Lake Winnipesaukee when ice in,
I
ice
believe
out?
so, yeah.
Now,
Okay.
it's probably Emerson Aviation.
Right, it used to be.
Okay.
Emerson Aviation.
Okay, but we can say, this is what is happening, and here are the points that you can go to, the place you can go to get the specific dates, or put in a chart that shows,
There's a link to that off, the Weirs thing, that's fairly easy,
Okay.
that's not hard,
That's something to
data
add, yeah.
to get, that's an easy
Yeah,
one.
but put that diagram in that says, this is what it looked like
Yeah,
20 years ago.
so usually you see it, as a list, it'd be interesting to see it as the chart like that, right? Just cause I never see it like that, I always see it as a list, but just as a visual.
Okay.
And I think under, when we're introducing the water resources, we should definitely include the new, dollar information that this
The new
Lake
what
Winnipesaukee,
information?
how much the water's worth,
Oh,
that dollar
yes,
information.
the value
Yeah,
study, yeah.
that would be a nice little sentence to start with.
By the way.
Yeah, because I think you're right. We have all these resources that are out there, and we don't need to reinvent them, but we
Right.
do need to make connections, so that if you want information about Winnisquam, Lake Winnisquam, go to the Winnisquam Watershed Network. They have they're doing a master plan, and they're a management plan for the watershed. We don't need to put
That's
that.
what's within the links. That's why
Yeah,
this new
exactly.
document, as a living new school document, needs to be intuitive
Right.
for those of us who aren't knuckle draggers.
Good. So I think this is well done. I have questions and comments, but I think that if we structure the master plan submittal to what we want as a conservation commission, what is important to us, and then reference back to this document, and this is,
So you're going to say stuff like, to maintain and protect current steep slopes, riparian areas.
Yep,
You're going to say, for the protection and betterment of, and of course, water quality. I was going one place else there, but I'm sorry.
and water quality, the state, we go out and we collect the samples, send them in, the state does the analysis. They then develop a summary of what was found. And we can just say, the state does this, it's done on an annual basis. Here's the state website address where you can get it for Winnipesaukee, Winnisquam, and O-Pee-Chee.
Yeah, I think, I can't remember where it is now, but where you talk about the water samples that are, here, by the city of Laconia utilizes 2 voluntary water quality monitoring, that's on page 23 again. The VRAP program and the Lay Lakes Management Program, but doesn't the city also take samples in Paugus Bay?
Yeah, I actually reached out, so I was reviewing some of the goals and stuff to see what's been accomplished. I'm kind of still working on pulling some answers together on that, but I reached out to Ben today to talk about where we are with the testing and like what specifically we test for now.
Is he the new water department?
Yeah, I don't know how new he is, I'm not sure when he started,
Within a year?
but yeah. He's been there since I've been here, so.
Okay, so I don't know exactly how we should proceed from here. I mean, do we want to identify the topics that we look at, and then, perhaps the easiest thing to do is for Taylor to go through and look at, okay, so we deal with wetlands. So just go in and pick out a few paragraphs out of wetlands that apply to wetlands, and maybe put in the wetland regs for the city.
Absolutely.
So that it's like, this is what we look for in wetlands. This is how you define a wetland, it's based on the soil and the depth of water and the types of vegetation. And in order to get an accurate description of the wetland on your property, you need to have somebody who has a license to do this work.
I think that'll be good. I will have to check and see if we put ordinances, like if we can put the regulations and the numbers into the master plan, just because I think that might overlap a lot with the ordinance document itself.
Right.
But I can talk to.
You don't need to be the Department of Redundancy Department.
Well, for instance, on page 28, City Ordinance 235-17, Wetlands Conservation and Water Quality Overlay District, and I think this is a really important, you know, window that is on this page, and that's what I'm talking about putting in. I'm not talking about.
Okay, that could be like our figures or something, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so when I, as a property owner, come in and it says buffers are established, and this is what it is, 100 feet around prime wetlands, and I get down and I'm saying, oh, I have a stream on my property. What's the buffer? Does this apply to my stream?
And we got into discussions like this before on it, you know, so if you could look at that piece of property, if you could see the stream there, and then you could see the setbacks, then people would be better prepared to deal with it. Or are you providing them information that they need to deal with? So are you using your own, which you believe, or theirs, which they provide?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, you know, when we went to the city council and we talked about putting a buffer around class 1 streams, they were like, why? Well, they're important because they're the source of our drinking water. If we don't protect them.
No, I think that's a good idea.
So I'm not talking about putting a regulation in, but putting in this kind of a window
Yeah,
that
okay.
really summarizes, so people can look at it and say, oh, yeah, okay, that's pretty good. But in this particular one, I think we need to look at class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. Anyway, okay.
I think it was interesting, this is a whole different part of it, but where they talked about the water resources on page 8 at the beginning, and how they were distinguished, how they decided how many wetlands, and it says, the NWI may underrepresent the number of wetlands in the city because its method of delineating was limited to using aerial photography. And I'm thinking, I mean, that just surprised me that somebody wasn't boots on the ground, walking around saying,
Yeah, well, so those 3 sources that I used for the delineating the wetlands, I added that in because that was also news to me, but I guess if you're looking at it from the national perspective, it kind of makes sense that they don't have somebody in every area, you know, flagging and out there, but
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think, well,
But that's
I
why
think
it's
it surprised me because we don't have as much land as some places, and it wouldn't, I don't think it would have been a stretch for them to, you know, drive around and walk around someplace, that's all.
I thought that there was a document that identified Durkee, but, you know, those 3 brooks, and then there were streams that were identified as A through I, without a name for those streams. But when we looked, we found those streams. They were identified on a map.
Right?
Yeah, I believe they're identified on the zoning map here, they're just not, it's a little hard to find it. Like,
Okay, but I think that, so we talk about Durkee and we identified the 3 brooks, the 3 major. I think we need to identify streams also identified or designated A through whatever it is, I,
Okay.
that are on the zoning map. Because somebody comes in and they say, I'm not on Durkee, I'm not on any of those 3, however,
Yeah, I can add that in. That makes sense. Because those A through I are the ones that have a 75-foot buffer versus the 30-foot buffer, so that would be a good distinction.
but we also have buffers around the class 1 streams. I don't think those are class 1 streams. Are they?
I'm not sure. I don't recall seeing anything about class 1 streams. I just know that there's the 30-foot buffer around intermittent and perennial streams, and 75-foot around streams A through I, basically. That's just how it's distinguished.
I think the other thing is, when we talk about vernal pools, maybe vernal pools and wetlands, they continue to evolve and are identified. You know, Homsey's project is, his property is an example of, you know, here's a vernal pool we didn't know existed. And as we identify additional vernal pools, we're gonna identify them on a map, so when you come in, Mr. Developer, we can show you what the latest is.
I think that's a good idea.
Where do you get the information for the invasive species priority management areas? Where's that come from?
So that was New Hampshire Granite, the clearhouse for GIS data for the state.
Yeah,
It was just one of the available data layers there.
where do they get their information?
Yeah, I can look through the
Are
data
they
for that.
considering lily pads to be invasive?
I'm not sure. I can look through and see.
I mean, a natural, I mean, that's what I'm seeing there, really.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything up in the old Weir's dump for all the
Japanese.
stuff that was dumped in there, and it's a plethora of Japanese knotweed and everything like that, so this here makes me question the data,
Yeah, I can look
right? I mean,
dig into that a bit.
I mow that stuff, so I don't know, you know. But I know that right next to me is stuff that's been dumped by the city of Laconia that I'm horrified if it flows over the edge and gets down into it. What we can do, you can't talk about that.
So I think invasive species is important because a developer comes in, and what we will typically do is tell them, if you encounter invasive species on your property, we expect that you will remove them.
And that's exactly what it is in Europe right now. In England, if you have any Japanese knotweed on your property, when you sell it, you're liable to get rid of it, you know, because of the damage it does to foundations and walkways and everything else. If you're living that close, otherwise it just takes over your back 40.
Do goats eat it? Seriously.
Well, goats eat oats and does eat oats. The little lambs. Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, it'd be, as I look at this invasive, it'd be nice to flesh it out. Some of these other ones also, you know, fascinating, but there should be a reference here, so when we're looking at our forested soils, it says group 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2B, what's that reference? No one knows. It needs a little bit there.
You
I
know,
think I have an extra link into that, but I can.
I'm just asking, I'm just strolling through here.
you know, Taylor, when it comes to,
Go ahead,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. And bedrock geology needs a little more fleshing out in there too. I can see what the technical stuff is, but you know, at least there should be a link when I click on it, that it brings me to what it actually is, because I'm a curious sort.
So, you identified this map of Laconia that shows where the flood-prone areas are, right?
I don't have that.
What was it that you,
Or are you talking about the website that I had sent out?
yeah, yeah.
Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah,
So,
I don't have
I-
that in here at all.
Yeah, I think again, we need to reference that, because if that website is constantly updated,
Mhm.
then it would be relevant to, to some developer who's looking at it, like one of my neighbors is on the lakeside, and because he did not have flood insurance for his house, he couldn't get insurance. And the flood insurance was gonna be very expensive, so he did what anybody else would do. He tore down the house, and he raised the foundation, so he's out of the flood zone. Now he doesn't need flood insurance. Beats me, but anyway. I'm not in the flood zone, so I
Do
guess.
you think, should I have a section in the water resources dedicated to flooding concerns, or is that something that's more?
That's off, FEMA, right? That's an easy enough one to get the floodplains off FEMA.
Actually, the floodplain maps are kinda tricky to find. I can
Right.
try and see if I can find a better source for it.
But I've seen that stuff before.
Yeah, they're just kind of buried in FEMA's website.
Yeah,
Takes like a lot of looking to find them. But the link that I had sent out with the flooding information, I think that you're referring to, is like a fairly recent study, and it incorporates that into it. But it's more so like if it's a map, and it's like if we had a 30-year storm today, these properties have a 50% chance of being flooded. So I can certainly
yeah,
work with
no,
some
I
of that
guess
info and add it in.
I guess I missed that you had sent out, but I know
Awesome.
I've seen some of that stuff
I can share it.
before.
I'll share it again in like a follow-up email tomorrow or something.
That would be
Fine.
great,
Yeah.
thanks.
I try and pay attention.
Deb, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I just,
On the farmland soils, where did they get that information from on the NRI farmland soils?
So some of the information I referred to in the
What
In
page are
the-
you looking at, Mike?
54.
so I can add some more information on page 8. That's kind of where I refer to
All right.
how I've either delineated something or where data came from, so I can
All right.
add some more details into that.
Alright, I guess I missed that.
No, that's fine. They don't have a specific link in there, so I will go back and.
So, conservation districts are the ones that set the parameters for soils in the county for those classifications, I believe.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I thought at one time we were doing that in some of our meetings.
And I was just gonna ask you, Lisa, to help flesh out the current best sources of information on soils.
Okay.
Especially the soils that are, the areas where soils are most important, like up at the state school property on the uphill side. Are there any other specific locations in the city where those soils are, the soils are really critical?
the prime,
It says in here some.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we can look at the, page 54's got that Farmland Soils Map, which I'm looking. So, in that map, the green is the prime farmland soils. and the following page from that is also the forested soils, so, I guess identifying maybe more areas of like specifics, so like, you know, there's prime farmland soils along White Oaks Road kind of thing. I guess, is that what you're looking for?
Well, what I would like to do.
What is it, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
statewide importance or local importance, what defines that?
Yeah, so, I think that is defined in here. Sorry, just trying to see if I can find
It's
it.
all good.
I believe it should be on page 17. So I'll make sure, I'm sure there's a definition in here somewhere, cause I focused on that a little bit, but I will
Right.
find where that is and, kinda highlight it a bit more.
Okay, so it's on page 17, the second paragraph from the bottom. There are 3 key distinctions. Prime,
Okay, yep.
is that
Yeah,
where
that's
you
what
were
I'm
looking?
referring
Yep.
to. So, prime farmland is the land that's best suited for food, feed, forage, fiber, and oil seed crops. State importance may not be as ideal. And then local is, it's kind of decided at a more local level, I guess. It's kind of just,
That's where we talk about the different characteristics of soil, and then we
Yeah.
we apply a.
based on the region.
So I guess what I'm thinking when it comes to soils is, I'm coming in, I wanna develop my land, and I see this map, and I see that I'm in maybe an area that could be prime farmland or right adjacent to it, and I don't know. Is there a way that you can go from this general map to, you know, zero in to get to my property? Can I get to my property from this by just?
Like the tax map overlay on it.
Right, so that, you know.
Some of
when
it's in there.
an applicant comes here and says, hey, you know, this is where my property is, and we look at this and we say, hey, you know, you got prime farmland on your property. I do? Yeah.
So if you go onto Access GIS Laconia, you can see that. You can turn on the layers that
Yeah,
relate to the natural resources inventory. Those are not updated to this yet. It's based on the 2009 one, all that data that was shared in. But you can go in and say, I wanna see conservation land and prime farmland, and it'll pop up on the map and you can zoom into your home.
right.
And
On
that's-
some of the stuff I commented about earlier, and we're showing different types of bedrock and stuff. And we see it there on the map. I see here where you do have everything listed out. So I don't know if it's a click in there or people just need to read more.
So
But I see exactly where my question came from, is answered here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so basically all these maps that are at the end here, once we have this document finalized, I believe what my plan is to send the data to the GIS coordinator and he will get it onto the website so that that's updated. But basically, like, this map here of the water resources, you can pull this up once it's updated, you can pull it up on the website, zoom into your parcel and say, oh yeah, I do have a wetland in that corner and a vernal pool here, and there's a stream down the road kind of thing. Like, you can still visualize that all.
Okay, so I think that's a really important tool for a developer.
They do have access to that.
Right.
Yes, it's just not updated from the 2009
But-
inventory.
You really want your developer going to the web soil survey to use the official soil maps. They also have all those layers. They can print out color-coded maps specific for each category, because I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe the city of Laconia has identified that those are the official accepted soil maps
I believe so.
for
yeah.
plans are the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service maps. So you don't want them using the maps from the NRI to base any of their developments on.
They should use the primary resource, but that is what I've pulled these from.
Is the web soil survey?
So maybe you do a section at the beginning of the document saying there are maps at the end of the document that are connected to tax maps, or however you wanna phrase it, so that you can go to property specific and get current data,
Okay.
so that they know that, you know, they can read and they can say, oh, you guys are concerned about soils? Oh, I go to my soils map, click on it, I'm like, this is where my property is?
So the question I have, they update the web soil survey every year. I don't know if you'd be updating this information every year.
I pulled it in August, so I'm not sure what.
I guess I'm
Time
just
frame.
thinking down the road. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking down the road,
It
how things might be linked is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
I see. Yeah, I see what you mean. I might be able to find. What if I link the New Hampshire Granite Clearhouse website? That's the.
I believe they are now, the Granite now uses the NRCS mapping, I
Okay,
believe
because
they
that
do.
typically has the most updated stuff that I've been able to find. I mean, I dig into the original source as well, but that might be somewhere, like, that might be a link that would be worthwhile to
You,
share.
you might wanna send me a quick email, could you make yourself a note?
Mhm.
Could you send me a quick email to ask the state soil scientist if indeed Granite is updating? Whenever NRCS updates their maps, is it automatically fed into Granite? If you wouldn't mind sending me an email, and then I can get an answer from the state soil scientist for you.
Of course, yeah.
I think that's a good idea, thank you, Lisa, thank you. I know you don't need another thing to do,
Nope, that'll be quick.
only quick if you know how to do it. I'd be gone for a couple of days. Okay, I marked up these, and I'll give it to you, I'll give you
Okay.
the whole thing.
Yeah, if anyone has any markups or email version of it as well, you can send them along and I'll work on incorporating them.
Some of them were questions like, it identifies a pond called Foot Pond. I know that on some maps, that is designated as Foot Pond. But I don't know if that's,
It is.
okay,
It turns out it's only the ones that aren't using updated information
okay.
referenced it otherwise, but I did find it as Bogus Bay,
You found it as Paugus Bay?
which we thought was interesting, cause we thought we would really have to give the speedboat the motor to get up there. So I would say that all of that is not real, but that really is what's on. That's named after a dead man, because they don't name stuff after living people. So it'd have to be the guy who formed it and made it. God bless Shelley.
Is it Foots apostrophe S?
Correct.
I saw a spelling mistake in there then.
And roller coaster is 2 words.
Yeah, some of the wording in here is pulled directly from the previous one. So if there's anything that like didn't make sense, just let me know. It might just be something that I dragged right over from the last
Yeah.
one and reworded.
Okay, so,
Because I'd challenge you to find the beaver on the beaver pond. Wait,
which beaver pond?
well, Foots Pond, they reference it as Beaver Pond in some areas, like Beaver Pond Estates.
Did you trap that little puppy?
No, but we have this otter who showed up recently in the past week, and he's pretty good because he's strong. You know, get underneath the ice, it'll wind right up. It'll push the ice up, and now it has a hole. So all the dogs want to go out and visit him.
I'm sure.
And he takes a large fish and he holds it and taunts everybody and flips around.
So
He's
what's he
inter-
catching, bass?
He ate the head off from it. I wasn't able to.
Just one of them?
No, he's been back this whole week. He just seems to be on tour. So he's well embedded.
Okay, so here's one of the things, and I don't know how to do this, or if it's important. There are connections between wetlands that seem to be in totally different areas. For instance, Pearly Pond, I am pretty certain is connected to a wetland that is off Lexington Avenue. I think there's a wetland over there behind the buildings on Lexington Avenue, and there's a connection between that wetland and Pearly Pond.
And there's a wetland right between the apartments, something Arms, and the driveway for the county complex too, so I don't know if they're all connected.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or if they were man-made.
Ah.
Well, even if they're man-made,
Right,
a wetland is a wetland.
right. I'm just saying.
And then,
Behind Beans, parking lot too. Cause they
right.
built that up so far, but at the
And-
far end, it's pretty wet.
Right, and that's exactly what I'm talking about, is behind the Bean Conference Center, and it connects over to, Pearly Pond.
Well, 'cause Deb too, when you go to the county complex, there's wetland kinda on both sides of the
Right,
complex,
right.
but in the back, you can see that
That's
there's a wet area that kinda,
And I wouldn't be surprised if that isn't connected to the one behind Bean.
yeah, well, I don't know how much fill they put in there.
But I wonder how we could, can we use aerial photographs to try to connect dots here so that we protect the dots?
This is when we need that drone again.
There we
Well,
go.
it's not, but is Pearly, I don't think any of that's prime wetland,
No, why we have prime land right here?
and it's secondary, and how,
I mean, I do think that's something that can happen, but I definitely know, I mean, speaking for myself, I do not have the GIS experience to analyze an aerial photo like that, but it exists, that's how they tend to.
I mean, is that the green section right here? On the legend water bodies?
Green in there is wetlands, the purple colors are hydric soils.
Right, but I'm looking at that wetland
Which one, drawing are you on?
in between Winsquam and Opeechee.
do they have the wetland at the Tardif Conservation Area connected to the one at Lexington Ave?
So that's the slightly larger one on this map on page
Yeah,
50.
Oh, yeah, I'm not there anymore. I gave up.
But the one on Lexington, like that, I'm trying to look at it. I know the one on Lexington most likely connects to that, just because the gas station there has a lot of wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
And it flows on the other side there, on the west side. I was driving by today, and it flows in, you know, you got all the phragmites on the west, but
Right.
it flows into that
It must be that
area
purple
on the
section,
east, which is,
which says poorly drained. It should say wetland.
Well,
Well, and that's exactly the issue, is that if we get a lot of precipitation like we did in July and August of this year, those poorly drains
Wetland.
they're wetlands.
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe we do that on a case-by-case basis, so if somebody comes in and the Bean Conference Center comes in and they say, oh yeah, we wanna make an expansion here, we wanna do this, and blah, 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 then we look at it and we say, okay, so what about this?
So that green right in the city must be behind Pleasant Street,
What page are you on?
150.
That's where I wasn't.
Which section are you looking at? Like,
So there's a green,
Water resources.
there's a green and then there's purple right next to it. And it's kind of where that little foot comes out of O-Pee-Chee on the left side there.
oh, yeah, yeah, okay.
I'm thinking that's gotta be between, oh no,
It's not
because
getting
there's
any bigger.
Pleasant Street. It's closer to Winnisquam.
Yeah, that's, it looks like Audrey Circle, Wentworth Ave, Birchwood Way, that general area.
Before you get to the school.
Yeah, so it must be between Birchwood and Pleasant.
Yes.
There's woods there, so
Yeah,
it
it's
must
right
be
in
back
between
there, okay. Huh.
So, I'm looking at water resources inventory. It's got these. What are the,
And
what are,
they do,
the red dots are vernal pools, okay.
I know, so.
There
it
you
looks-
go.
It looks like, they consider the pond there a vernal pool.
Where's this?
Are you saying Pearly?
Yeah,
Yeah, so I put vernal pools at the very top because I wanted it to be, there, it's a smaller thing, so it needed to be at the top of the map. It
Right.
might just be covering the fact that it's a pond,
yeah,
that little indication thing. I'm not sure where, like, this is the vernal pool inventory that the city has,
right.
so I'm not sure.
They must consider it a vernal
Yeah,
pool.
Unless the small, no, that's not actually, never mind.
'Cause that's right in that location.
So
Okay,
that,
where are you, Deb?
Here. Where are you?
Oh, yeah, that's it, where in the world is Carmen San Diego?
but they're not connected, that little, yeah, I know, so this little S of a wetland is not connected to anything else.
I think it must be,
Well, I'm
Yeah,
saying on this
yeah,
map. It's
yeah,
not
on this
connected.
map. right.
Yeah, based on, and I mean, that might just be something that's like, needs to be field verified. And, you know, if wetlands identified as a connection, a wetland scientist submits that and then it might be updated, but.
So I'm looking at this, at the northern part of this water resources map. And there is a blue pond there. Is that Pickerel Pond?
I think so.
Yeah,
If it's on the west side of 106,
like, kinda like northwest on the map,
Yes.
yes, that's Pearly, or, Pickerel.
Okay, so,
And the large green area under that is that large wetland complex that's just south of Pickerel.
okay, and that large wetland that you're talking about there, that green area, is on page 27. It says Great Blue Heron's Nest. That
Yes.
is that wetland.
Yes.
That is and because the Fuller property did logging a few years ago, the herons did not return last year.
Okay.
And that water body that in the picture on page 27, this 27, that water body is about I'm gonna guess it's 8 or 10 feet higher than when you go all the way over to Pickerel Pond Road, where it starts. So the beaver dams have been built and built and built and built and built and built, and now they got this water body that's,
Would that be another reason why the herons aren't there, is that the water's become too deep?
you know.
Well, they got plenty of frogs. I actually don't know where that picture is. A lot of these pictures I know. That one I think I know and I can stand on. I'm not sure.
27?
The one that shows the blue heron in the nest.
Right.
With
That's-
the beaver house underneath.
That's another one of those things, all the pictures in the document are from the original NRI, so if there's something, if you want a new picture of something, just let me know and I can work on
See,
that.
I think I know where that is, but it's not what you're saying, so I don't know. I'm not gonna argue it either. So, one of the things I am curious about here, as we're looking at, the, habitats. Get back to where it was. 2020 highest rated, so we're page 32. And I'm just curious what ranks the highest habitat in New Hampshire. Is that human habitat? Because most of what I see in purple is built on by humans. All along the edge of Winnisquam and Paugus and Meredith Bay and all along the edge of Governors. So I'm curious as to if that's referencing animals or humans.
Yeah, it's referencing, species in New Hampshire that are considered, species of concern.
Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts. Really, I mean, on this here, this is, all of this on it is where is some of the most built stuff.
They're of concern because they're on the most built stuff, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying, that in these areas
Why
that? No, I'm just asking, I can't remember.
I was talking
WAP.
invasive species.
Yeah, well, no, I can't remember the WAP, how this works, so are you saying that they are, is it highest ranked areas of concern, or is it?
It's highest ranked habitats for species of concern.
Ecological condition.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha,
So while a lot of it does end up being
developed,
developed
it's still
shoreline, it's still the areas that would
support,
serve them
gotcha.
best.
Okay, sorry, thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
No, that was a fair question in there too. Because, I mean, really this goes right down into, Paugus Park and some other areas. I could see this here above the Laconia where it's the state park or it gets into conservation or public, you know. So it'd be south down, it gets into there, I can see some of that. But all this other side here, that's fully developed or a very narrow edge all the way down Paugus Bay. I mean, less than 50 feet of separation between the boulevard and the water.
Should the word concern be on that chart somewhere? Ecological conditioned concern?
This map itself is just directly pulled from their site,
Should
but
name, yeah.
I'm not too sure.
About changing their map.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess we shouldn't probably do that.
I don't see them shooting deer along the edge of the water there.
I can go back and
I'm
explain.
I'm just
more.
curious, it's a little odd.
No, I can flesh that area out a little bit to make sure it's clear what that's highlighting.
Okay, it is 7:34. Do we want to leave this where it is now and let Taylor go and make modifications? Then we talk about it again at the next meeting?
It sounds good. Did we have a good discussion? Was it helpful?
Yeah, I think this is plenty to work on and edit, and if, again, like I know Dean's got a copy, if anyone has any grammar type edits and whatnot, I will certainly take those as well.
So,
Does anybody have any recommendations for parts that you definitely want put in the master plan that we haven't talked about or haven't voiced concern
So
about?
you hit the high notes, you know, riparian, wetlands and,
I mean, I have vernal pools and wetlands.
vernal pools, steep
Water
slopes.
quality and aquifers, agriculture soils, wildlife habitats.
steep slopes?
Yep,
It's in there, yeah.
You have anything else, Lisa?
Stormwater runoff.
Mm.
You wanna
Ooh.
include any of that?
ooh,
Okay, so what about stormwater runoff? I think that would
Is
fall under
Is that a
DPW.
DPW
but-
thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they will have a little bit more information to add to a section for that. I can see if there's anything in the current master plan, and where they located that in there, if they have.
I think it alludes a little bit in the steep slope talk about that.
Okay,
Well,
yeah,
it might be also under like emergency preparedness or something.
it could be, yeah.
One suggestion is Polistrian,
Mhm.
define it.
Okay.
I mean, I had to look it up.
Yeah, one of the ways that I kind of approached this document too was that I wanted this to be the document that you don't need to leave to get more answers unless it's got the link right there, whereas, so I like defining things like that versus in the master plan, maybe, like, you know, certain things don't need to be defined and whatnot, but,
Mhm.
so if there's something, if there's a question that you feel like was left in the middle of it, just let me know, I will flesh something out there.
And the same goes for you, like, if you wanted to send us drafts or whatever for us to
Yeah.
look at
Okay.
before the next, you know,
Mhm.
just a chunk at a time, whatever.
Yeah. I will work on that.
And if you could, I mean, we talked about this before, so if you could put a date stamp, so we know that we're dealing with the 12/1
Yeah,
draft.
on the agenda, I have, like, the document name has the date in it, but if you want, I can put, like, I can put a watermark over it or
Oh,
something.
no, okay, all right, so that's good, No, just so that,
Yeah, just so
you
we
know,
know what we're
so
dealing
now I'm
with.
giving you one that's out of date.
That's fine.
Right.
The document you have on the agenda is the most up-to-date, so any edits that I make from that there will be no problem with that.
Okay. It's just,
And like the next meeting we have, I will put all those edits together and that will be the newest version.
good, okay, good. Okay. All right, so everybody good with the NRI? Okay. So the next,
Thank you, Taylor, for all your
yeah,
work on this.
this is so much better than the previous version. This is really good.
I really tried to make it more story-like and
Readable.
like, readable,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it kind of felt
that's what I enjoyed about it.
Yeah, so you were successful.
sweet, thank you.
Okay, so the next item is the new business and the schedule of meetings.
Yeah, I know some commissions have to approve their schedules for the year. I wasn't sure if Concom likes to do that, so I just figured I'd show everybody
We
that.
used to.
I have
we
a
used to.
question. I have a question. Is our second meeting of the month a regular meeting or is it a work meeting?
I feel like it used to be a work meeting. Do you know what at one point, I think it was delineated that way, but we haven't really held to that.
Or since we had more
Presentations and stuff.
come in front of us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
You're not wrong. That's,
no, I don't think you are wrong. I think you're right, Lisa. But, I think the question is, how does the planning department want us to operate? Do they want us to look at this and say, if an applicant comes, you only come on the first meeting of the month, because the second meeting is that the way the planning department wants us?
So I think it's kind of case by case, because sometimes we get an applicant and they're like, we need to go to the next planning board meeting, no if and or buts, and we're like, okay, so you'll go to the next Concom, which is next week or something. If we want, I can talk to Dean and see, like, hey, can we make sure the first month is as many applicants as possibly can? Like, if they're not on a time crunch, we can put them to that date, that's better. If somebody is really stretched thin on time, maybe we make an exception every once in a while or something.
We haven't had any more than 3 applicants at a time,
Not since I've been here, no.
right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering too about, in terms of quorums and stuff, if we're trying to get a quorum twice a month, is how easy that's gonna be as opposed to once a month. So,
well, we have a new member, correct?
So we have a new associate member, and that is Bob Harrington.
Yep.
And I'm happy that Bob is willing to do this, because he's a longtime resident. I think he's open-minded. I think he has balanced views, and I think he'll be a good addition. I mean, I would guess that he's lived in the city probably longer than Mike, and I think
There you go.
Mike and Lisa
Yeah.
are the,
All right, throw down. You turned 60 yet? She wins.
yay.
He's feeling it, you're feeling it.
Dean mentioned to me that typically when they have a new member, he meets with them to onboard them, brief them on what the commission's doing. Is that something that we should plan on? I can email him and try and get that set up for the upcoming week before the next meeting or so. I don't know if you want to meet with him as well with us.
sure. I guess, all right, so I put down, the next meeting is supposed to be the 15th of December. Do we want to have a meeting on the 15th of December?
They've already shoved that off on some of the other ones and said, see you in January. Just as what I've encountered.
Happens to be my
Unless, of course, someone needs to.
school Christmas party.
Oh, Deb's gonna be at a school Christmas party, so
No,
we'll
well,
come
it
there?
actually, it's over by 6, and it's over at Wayfair's, and
What kids
so I
get
could
to
just
go
toddle
away?
across.
Kids can't drink coffee.
No, it's for the staff,
Oh,
sorry. And
Okay,
I guess they're working on their liquor license, is what I hear, so.
Oh, you gotta put a shot in that coffee.
okay, so the question is still open. Do we want to have a meeting on the 15th, 2 weeks from today?
I'm fine with it if something comes up and you need to.
Yeah, I feel like if something comes up, we can do it that way,
Okay,
or we could have a party.
so what if we were to,
Don't turn the camera on.
okay, you want to have one on the 15th? I don't have a major problem with it.
I mean, do you guys, if we want, so let's say something comes up, I mean, do we want to set a deadline? If we don't have anything come up by next Wednesday, should we just call it and we?
Sure, that sounds good. If we're not serving the public for any reason, then we don't need to meet.
Okay,
So I'll send out an email next Wednesday deciding if we have one or not.
great.
sounds good.
Okay, okay. Okay, so, all right, so here's the schedule for next year. So, to this year's date, on the 15th, next year's is on the 21st. I would suggest we put no meeting on December 21st.
I concur.
That makes sense.
Now, are there any other dates that we don't think are good ideas?
Or do we have a Labor Day conflict at all, or?
I believe I double checked on holidays, like
Okay.
directly.
Okay.
I'm gonna do another look through it just to make sure, but.
I cannot be here on Groundhog Day. No, I'm kidding.
Ah,
Just teasing.
Didn't we just have Groundhog Day?
Feels like it.
I thought every day was
I
Groundhog
thought I
Day.
roasted that sucker last week.
We have an Otter Day.
I concur. You guys have got some good thoughts going.
Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion. Do I need to make a motion?
No, wait a minute.
What?
We got one other thing,
Oh.
under other
No,
business.
To accept the
December.
calendar?
Oh, I'm
Do we
sorry,
wanna
I'm
do
sorry.
that? I don't know. Do we need,
I don't know.
I don't think we do.
Yeah, up to you guys if you want to.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll make a motion. We accept the calendar other than December 21st next year.
Second.
I second it.
Okay,
No, Lisa seconds
Whatever.
it.
okay, all in favor,
right
say
along.
aye.
Aye.
I'm in favor.
Okay, sorry, we skipped the discussion part, that's
Aye.
okay. Okay, so then we go down to, let's go down to, actually, I don't know of other business.
I would like to report on the Lakes Region Management Advisory Committee, real quick.
Sure.
Okay, so this is DES, the Lakes, not region, Lakes Management Advisory Committee. And I meant to bring my paperwork in from the car, so I can send specifics to Taylor. So that's, I've forgotten how many people, there's like probably 16 people that sit on that committee, and some of them are voting members and some are not. And they represent all different kinds of, similar to other state committees. But they have, well, let me back up. I don't know if any of you have ever utilized their blog site, and sometimes I send out the legislative tracking stuff. They're gonna be changing from the blog format where you can just like click on a link and get sent to it, to putting everything on the DES website. They have no control over it, and DES is managing it, so I'm just letting you know, things are changing there if you were ever going to that. The Rivers Advisory Management, or the Lakes, they're changing that up electronically. We had discussion on like the House bills and the Senate bills and the LSRs that are coming up, and we did have some discussion about the Representative Bordas. It's still an LSR, it's not a actual bill yet on removing speed limits from Lake Winnipesaukee. So that's something they're gonna track, but we did have discussion about it. Some of the members who sit on that committee, on that advisory committee, that's myself, I represent the State Conservation Committee, which oversees conservation districts, so it's not this group, but there's a guy named Ryan who represents boating interests, who works at the pier in Weirs, so he represents the boating interests. There's a guy named Dick Smith who represents the fishing industries, and then Jared, and I've forgotten his last name, who's from tourism. I don't know if it's the statewide or just Lakes Region, but they're all in Laconia. I mean, they're all like here. Ryan's here, and yeah, so they're all like here.
He's Flightcraft.
Jared Gilmet.
Huh?
He's Flightcraft.
Who's like?
Ryan.
Oh, well, I thought he was boating.
Voting interest, yeah, he's
Yeah, okay,
Flightcraft.
okay, I didn't know what that was.
New
but
York, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
He did mention how big industry he works for, so.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, they weigh in too, and they were all sort of saying like, well, from a safety point, Captain Dunleavy said it hasn't made any difference to have the speed limits on there. So from a safety interest, it's not really, hasn't made any difference. And they were all talking money, fishing. And I said, I'll tell you, I'm looking at it as a conservation district. I'm looking at from the environment point of view of wave action and turbidity and all this other stuff. And
Erosion.
yeah, that's what I was saying. And so I said, and the chair of the Lakes Management Advisory Committee is David Packard, I believe is his name, out of Barnstead. He's and he's, I think, on the New Hampshire Lakes Board or something too. I mean, and there are people like New Hampshire Lakes is representative too. So I'm just letting you know that there's going to be follow-up discussion. There's interests on either side, and I just think there's probably going to be a lot, and I'll let you know. I don't know how much I can share with you about stuff. It's all public. I'm sure it's all public, but it hasn't been approved yet, and that's why I was being kind of vague.
So
I hope.
when you get documentation, you get public documents, if you could refer us.
I will
to those.
find out from Tracy Sales at DES how much I can share in what format, because like I said, they really post everything, but right now they're having this transition. Otherwise, I would tell you, just go to the blog and she'll have posted what you could see. But I know they're having this transition. The next meeting, I believe.
The DES website is terrible.
Well, I'm just, they have no
Sorry.
control, I know, but they have no control over how this is all gonna happen. So I will ask Tracy exactly how much I can, because she said I could share the legislative tracking information and all that with you, but anyway. So, where else was I going now? So anyway, I think the next meeting they're looking at will be in potentially January, February. Because we're gonna do a doodle poll, so it hasn't been set, is with a combined meeting with the Rivers Management Advisory Committee and Lakes Management. They try to meet once or twice a year jointly. The other thing, and I apologize I didn't bring this, maybe you have information on this, there's the CORD committee that is in charge of disposal of state lands, and there was one in Laconia that I think they had a discussion about, which is a very, very, very small parcel that had to do with I believe the rail trail or whatever. So, I mean, I'm just letting you know. I don't know if you already were
I'm not
notified
aware of it,
about
no.
that. I'll ask Tracy if I can share any particulars about it. I'm just letting you know.
Are they gonna dispose of it to the city of Laconia?
No, city of, oh, yes, I will find out. I don't know if it's to the
I mean,
city.
that'd be an interest to follow up on.
Yeah, I will
Seeing
find
as
out.
none of our do-nothing representatives will ever take an interest
It's
in
well, it's really tiny, and I think it's just to facilitate action, like maintenance or something. I mean, it was not I didn't get alarmed by what I was hearing. I think it was just
just access.
yeah.
I mean,
I can't remember if that was that meeting I was at, or somebody was just saying, it's just like, or was it you, Mike, that was saying people, not with particulars, but the last meeting, that there's lands that people don't even know are state lands, like you went out to clear them and people were like, well, get off my property. And they were like, yeah, so it may have been one of those. Anyway, so I'm just letting you know that I was there. There were these key things. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. And Taylor, would you ask Dean if the Conservation Commission can comment on the changes in the speed limits on Winnipesaukee?
Okay.
I am.
As citizens, we can.
I imagine
Yeah.
there'll be a public hearing in Concord about it, as a bill hearing, once it gets language, that it's a bill hearing. I mean, I have been reading, I'm sure you've all been reading in the paper, and Representative Bordas said, I had to start somewhere, I'm not really married to all speeds gone completely. He was saying that maybe it would be over here, there's no speed limit, but here
well,
there is.
he's interesting. He comes from New York and he
I know.
writes that there's no speed limits on Lake George, which is complete BS. It's 45 during the day, 25 at night. So that's what New York has. Why?
Well,
I can feel either way here, you know what I mean? They, actually, Linda's dad was the one who probably introduced this bill back in the day.
Well, so like I said, I can find out what the process, I can find out more about what the process will be, but in my past experiences, once it becomes a bill, it does usually have a public hearing
Yep.
at the legislative building.
Okay, I think that if what we can do is find out from Dean if we can comment, and then we can notify other agencies, organizations, so that they could weigh in.
Yeah.
Winnisquam Watershed Network would probably be interested.
Well, that's Winnisquam, that's
I
okay.
understand, but still, there's an interest in having a speed limit on Winnisquam,
I
'cause
reached-
there isn't.
I reached out to some other watershed
Dangerous.
associations when I first heard about this, and the comment I got back from them was, we'd like to see the language of the bill before we make any position statement.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that's a legitimate comment.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I mean, okay, thank you. Okay, staff report.
Yeah, I have one small thing. So our proposal for the Antioch program did not get picked. However, there's one student who's taking a GIS class that is water resources based, and he said he would love to do the spatial aspect of
Okay.
the project, so I'm talking to him tomorrow about some details, get a little more
Okay.
information. His class doesn't start till January, so we have a while to, flesh things out, and, after my initial conversation with him tomorrow, maybe we can do a follow-up one where we see kind of more of exactly what we want him to do and whatnot.
Nice.
So we still kind of got something out of that, so that's good.
Good, that's good. And if, so I think it's good. See what he has. Anyway, so. Okay, anybody have anything else?
Move to adjourn, Deb, move to adjourn.
No, wait, there was something
Oh.
else. Oh, so the bridge is done on Court Street.
Yeah.
The what?
The bridge
Bridge.
is done on Court Street. And that was the state project, is that correct?
I don't,
Yes,
was it?
I think so. I'm not, anyway.
Probably use state funding somewhere.
Their water containment, their silt socks were all askew. It's a mess down there. This was, when was I down there? 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because I was at the party store, and I was appalled. I'm like, if the state can't do this right, then how can we ask developers?
We don't have say over the state. We do have say
She
over
could,
the
she
development.
could complain, though, make a complaint.
I was gonna say, there's rules that you have to follow when you're working next to the water, right?
Well,
And
I
it's-
totally
and
agree.
like, are they state laws, or is it all community based?
Say it would be a combination of the two.
Yeah, I mean,
I w-
it's just irritating when, it was just a mess down there. And
And I haven't been down, so I can't comment, so.
I'll
It's still a
clarify
mess.
with Dean about if it was state or city. And I can stop by tomorrow as well and see what it looks like right now. See if there's anything that we can make happen.
it's, certainly they need to stabilize that area for the winter, because nothing's gonna grow now, all that dirt. It's just dirt, so if they, left the silt socks, at least so there's something,
Yeah, or maybe
and
mulching or something.
actually put them where they were supposed to be.
You did remind me of something. So I went down to Bartlett Beach, something follow up from the summer, and they did pick, because I remember saying there all the silt fence was still there, and it all looked messy. Apparently that was all cleaned up, but there were 2 people doing suspicious things while I was there, and they didn't like me being there, so I
Surprise.
left. I left in a hurry. But I was also
After you
drove-
called the local constabulary.
Yes, and then I went down to Messer Street, and I didn't know if you'd ever considered or thought, that swale that kind of runs off right into the boat ramp a little bit, between the trees, and there's a little swale, and there's the grass here, and then the parking lot. I was just wondering about rain garden. Just wondering if we ever want to look for funds to kind of turn that a little bit into a rain garden. That's all I'm saying. We don't have to talk about it tonight. It was just an idea.
Which area?
On the
I'll
right
draw-
hand, on the right-hand side of the ramp.
Yes.
So
Where's that
where the
long-
major part of the ramp, and then the major part of the parking lot is there.
So, they left that area as a swale, as
Yeah.
a natural swale.
Yeah, and we can go down there. Why don't you and I plan to just pop down there sometime before we get too much snow there? It just looks like that swale just kind of empties into the end of the boat ramp, and I just kind of wondered if maybe we could do some reconfiguring down there. That's all. Just mention it. I don't want.
In the meantime, I'll see if there's any decision on the insurance situation there, if we're gonna have the boat ramp.
That's
'cause
at Messer Street.
Yeah,
Right,
You were talking.
Really?
she was
Oh,
talking
you were
Messer-
talking-
I
Messer
was talking
Street.
2 places. Yep. So I was talking
Okay.
Messer Street. Oh,
I was
is that
lost.
supposed to go away?
there's supposed to be a decision this month about it. I have not heard about it, so I will see if there's been a,
Have they reconsidered public access to Opeachy then?
yeah, they're trying to
Because-
decide the insurance side of it, because basically the issue is who's liable if there's an oil spill kind of thing, because there's been an issue with that in the past, apparently.
So if the state, because on the parcel that the conservation district manages down across from the old state school property on Parade Road, that access road is horrendous. It's supposed to go down to the water where we have a little boat ramp. That might be, yeah, and it's still, I mean, there's remnants of the asphalt and all that stuff, but you really cannot take a vehicle down that road anymore. I'm just saying, that might be a discussion to have with the state, and that might be a way to get that parcel, that road picked up, and, I mean, you know, redone and all, because we could still use the field for agriculture if they wanted to take over and upgrade their access and
Yeah.
put that as a boat ramp with parking. We could still have the field for
I'll
agriculture.
definitely share that in the department, because I think would be some good
Yeah,
information
so
for
I
them if
talked-
the decision hasn't been made yet.
I talked to Bob Hardy at Division of Cultural and Natural Resources as my contact. It used to be Bob Sperl, but I haven't called him recently, but, so Bob Hardy is who my contact is about that.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to belabor the
No,
meeting.
no, and, yeah, I mean, I was just, as a future thought, when you talk about oil spills into Opeechee or whatever, who's liable, I mean, there's many spots, and especially now in the winter, where things have cleared out, and you can see how that land goes right down into the water. I was thinking about Dutile's property the other day, and if there is any kind of swale there that would contain any oil spill there, or.
Oil company on Messer Street? Is that
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yeah, and they have some kind of big bags of things, like behind their buildings now. I don't know what it is, I don't.
I don't know either. I haven't-
I just saw that they have these huge, they kind of look like paper bags, I don't know. This is what I can see from the middle school from when I go up the stairwell and it's all windows and it's like, what are those
Take some of our
things?
money and buy our spyglass.
I'll go to Utah. I'll go.
Well, you don't have to go, I mean.
No, we'll go ask them what it is. I mean, they deliver oil to my house and, you know, they deliver it today, I pay them today or tomorrow, and, you know, so
Okay, yeah, if you're over
I'm a
there.
good customer,
Take a
and
look.
I'll go and say, hey, you know,
Maybe they've
dude.
moved them, maybe it's gone, I don't know, maybe it was, I don't know. It just was, I've never seen it before.
So and you guys hung out long enough, so I got one last thing. I went to the dump this morning with my #1 dump sticker.
The
And
Laconia dump.
Laconia dump. And I went down Pickle Pond Road, saw the sign. I was like, wow, that looks good, you know, I took a whole view of that as I'm coming down in. And yet, curiously enough, because it snowed last night, I know I was out when I watched it snow last night. There was a spot this morning that had no snow on it, one car had been there
Oh,
overnight. So I'm curious about that, cause I don't go driving around my neighborhood, but I don't know if that's getting any action like that.
yeah.
You know, I just, when I drive by on a snowy morning, I'm looking for deer prints, and
Yeah.
if there's a spot where a car was, wow, he must have been canoeing all night long.
Maybe he was hunting, he was looking for deer.
Yeah, well, he would've had to been in there last night, because
That's not legal.
A lot of that.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I'm sorry, Dean, did
Vote.
That's okay. Anybody have any comments about adjourning? Mr.
somebody
Foote?
made a favor, say yes.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Mr. Foote, I think you should get some goats.
At your knee.
I
You
got
could-